Bioshock, the game where you're halfway between a regular person and a superhero. Bioshock as a series is really well received, and for good reason. A lot of people would even consider it as one of the best series in their arbitrarily tuned list. I wouldn't call it the number one best, but it is certainly really good. I, however, am a bit late to the party because while the original game came out in 2007 and the latest came out in 2013, I only just played through all the games about 10 months ago, which is almost a decade too late. Unlike other games that have a trillion iterations, Bioshock only has 3 games. Bioshock 1, 2, and 3. Or wait, not 3, Bioshock Infinite. I guess they took some notes from Valve. Bioshock 1 was a huge hit when it came out for about a million different reasons. Whether that be the story, gameplay, or the twist halfway through when you realize the person guiding you was a fake and is actually bald. Bioshock 2 followed up with that by doing more of the same, but with a few changes. Instead of playing as a regular person, you play as these things, which are intuitively called Big Daddies, and you can actually use both hands at the same time instead of just one. Then there is Bioshock Infinite, which uses a lot of the same formula, except the setting has you in the air instead of at the bottom of the ocean. Now, mostly everyone can agree that Bioshock 1 was a masterpiece, and Bioshock 2 was also good, but a bit of a step down. Bioshock Infinite though is a mixed bag. If you look around, you won't see a generally agreed upon opinion. Half seem to like it and the other half don't. At least that's what I see, but I don't know. I, however, will say that Bioshock Infinite is the worst one in the series. Change my mind. Now before I continue, I want to clarify that I don't dislike Infinite. It is still a really good game in its own way. However, I'm looking at it compared to the rest of the series, and in that regard, I think it's the worst one. Now, part of the reason why I think it's the worst is the setting. Bioshock Infinite takes place in Colombia. No, not that one. Colombia is a floating city high up in the sky. How is it floating? I have no idea. Quantum particles apparently, whatever that is. But hey, that's why it has the sci-fi tag. Bioshock 1 and 2 though take place in an underwater city called Rapture, which sounds like a cooler name than Colombia. Don't have me on that. An underwater city also sounds a bit cooler, IMO, than a floating city, but maybe that's just me. And side note, Rapture seems a bit more safer than Colombia, honestly. Because if you think about it, what's stopping someone from just getting pushed off the edge? OSHA approved. So the settings of Bioshock 1 and Infinite seem like polar opposites basically, even down to the society that lives there. Apart from one being underwater and one in the air, Rapture is a pure capitalist society with almost no rules and regulations. Anything goes and everything is a business, even your health. Heck, the whole tagline of the place is, "No gods or kings, only man." Now in Bioshock Infinite, almost everyone in Colombia is religious, and almost everything they do is based on their beliefs. Literally just to get into the city you have to get cleansed of your sins where some priest basically baptizes you and almost drowns you. I still like the setting of Colombia, but I think I like Rapture a bit better honestly. There is one big thing about the settings though. The atmosphere in the collapsing city of Rapture really adds to the survival horror part of the game, which I really like. It's not a complete horror game, but it has just a tiny bit of creepiness to it. Throughout Rapture, there is no natural lighting, and while it's not pitch black, it is more of on the darker side. In Bioshock Infinite, they got rid of any bit of horror. There is nothing scary, like at all. I guess the only scary thing is the huge bird. Almost everything in the game is bright. On Steam, they even replaced the horror tag with beautiful. Now that doesn't make it worse per se, again they're supposed to be complete opposites. However, for me, that little bit of horror in Bioshock 1 and 2 was one of my favorite parts of the environment. It was essentially one of the key parts of the Bioshock name, but they didn't continue with it in Infinite. However, Bioshock Infinite does have a DLC called Burial at Sea, which takes place on Rapture, and it shows both the normal looking section and the section that's all torn up. I'll say the environment in this DLC is really good. It has the same feel as the original Rapture in Bioshock 1, but with the updated visuals. So yeah, that part's really cool. One of the other key parts of Bioshock are the plasmids, or in Infinite they call them vigors. I'm still gonna call them plasmids anyway. Plasmids are how you get your Superman abilities. In Bioshock 1, you inject yourself with blue drugs or something, and in a few seconds you can shoot lightning from your hands. Bioshock Infinite also has these plasmids, but you drink them instead. A lot more consumer friendly. You have about a trillion different types of plasmids, like hypnotizing the metal guys, or turning people into furnaces or ice cubes like in the cartoons. In Bioshock 1, these plasmids are almost a requirement to get through the game because if you don't, you'll eventually end up running out of ammo unless you check every corner of the levels for spare change. In Bioshock Infinite, I barely use the plasmids. Since ammo was plentiful and really cheap, I just find it quicker to shoot the guys and move on. Also in Infinite, you have to select the plasmids in this rotating menu, and oftentimes I'd end up quickly selecting the wrong one, so I waste the salts on something stupid and end up losing half my health as well. On top of that, Infinite has less plasmids. There's only 8 instead of 11, and the only reason I think they did that is so it looks nice and symmetrical in this circular menu. Almost all those 8 plasmids are different as well. The only one that's not different is the lightning one, but that's it. I found most of these new plasmids kinda useless. The only ones I really used was Devil's Kiss and Shock Jockey, but maybe that's just me. Like, return to sender lets you make a temporary shield in front of you, but why would I do that if I could just hide behind a wall? Undertow, Bucking Bronco, and Murder of Crows all essentially stun enemies so you can take them out easier, just in different ways. So why have 3 plasmids that have almost the same purpose? To be fair though, Bioshock 1 has the Cyclone Trap and Insect Swarm, which also both kinda have the same purpose of stunning your enemies. So depending on the person, one is better than the other. But in Bioshock 1, the other plasmids actually had more of a use. Incinerate and Security Bullseye both add different ways to take out enemies, but they can actually coexist because security devices appear somewhat often, but when they're not around you can set them on fire. Oh, and telekinesis is cool. The Burial at Sea DLC for Infinite added 2 new plasmids, one that makes everything ice and one that gives you X-ray, which is pretty cool. But in the main game, I basically found the plasmids in Infinite less useful, so I barely used them. And that made Infinite just another FPS game instead of truly being a Bioshock game. There are a few other gameplay quirks that I thought of as being the main one being that you can only carry 2 guns at once. Now I guarantee that at least one person is going to talk about how that's more realistic, but come on now. In this series. In the first Bioshock, you carried all of the 7 weapons total that you had, so you never had to pick which 2 to carry. I would guess the main reason you can only carry 2 in Infinite is because there are 14 different weapons. But the other thing about them is that many of the weapons are kind of the same. That probably made no sense, let me explain. So there's this carbine and this machine gun. Both of them are meant to be used at semi-long ranges. So since everyone is going to like one more than the other one is just going to be barely used. Like, I like the carbine more, so I just always use that instead of the machine gun. Not to mention that half of the guns have 2 variants of them. Since there are 2 factions per se you have to go against, you know, the Revolution and the Pope's army, they both essentially have the same weapons, but slightly different. I know this is supposed to present the player with more choices, but this also leads to the same problem where you're gonna like one variant more than the other, so you're just gonna use that one instead. Bioshock 1 doesn't have this problem because all the weapons in the game have their unique purpose with almost no overlap. Like you have the melee, the starting gun, or the weak enemy gun, the short-ranged gun, the medium-ranged gun, the long-ranged bow, the explosion gun, and the gun that throws different types of bleach at enemies. And yeah, you hold all these guns, so you never have to sit there and flip a coin to choose which one you want to keep. Oh, and remember the different ammo types you can get in the first 2 games? These ammo types I think added some depth to the game. Like for the Tommy gun, there was the standard ammo, but there was also the heavy ammo for the metal guys, and the red ammo that does more damage to the standard guys. These ammo types also make you more cautious on how you spend your money since the different types are more expensive, so you have to decide whether they're worth it or not. Bioshock Infinite doesn't have this, so that was a bit disappointing. Now I don't want to just slam the game this entire video because there are a few things that I do genuinely like in Infinite. The new mechanic of the skyhook and these railways you can ride on is really cool. I liked it. It makes you feel like insert superhero name here, or something like that. And being able to strike enemies from it is satisfying. Now Elizabeth is an interesting character, but during the game she does nothing except occasionally throw you money and health. The enemies don't even care about her. The cool thing she can do though is make these tears. She can make these tears to bring in objects from a different universe. That could be cover, a thing you can hook to, or even weapon barrels, which is neat. When you can somewhat change the environment like this, it adds different ways to go about going through the levels. But now, back to your regular scheduled programming. Now I generally don't care so much about the stories in games, like it's not the thing I focus on too much. But what about the story of Infinite? I'll be honest, it made very little sense. Like, alright, so you play as Booker DeWitt. You're told early you've been sent here to find Elizabeth and bring her back so your debt can go away. Sounds simple. Since Elizabeth is an important person, there's the usual resistance that you'd expect as you try to get away. But all of a sudden, there's this revolutionary group called the Vox Populi that you have to help now. Okay, that's fine. You help them with something, but then you go into one of those tears and you're in another universe where you died and there's a revolt. But when they see you, the Vox turn against you? This is getting a bit odd. There's this mechanical bird called the Songbird that won't let you leave. So, okay, you have to find this device to take control of it. Along the way, you go in another tear to find an older Elizabeth who attacks Earth? What? I'm reading through this long plot summary and it's not helping. Anyway, you go find Comstock, the main leader, drown him like the priest in the beginning of the game did, and then you go and eventually find a way to destroy the Songbird. Finally, now you can leave. So you do that while adding some more stuff that only made me more confused, like what the f is this? Honestly, I feel like this kind of story might have been better for a novel, not as much for a game. But hey, maybe I'm just a small brain that can't comprehend how in-depth the story goes. Bioshock 1 and 2 have easy to understand stories. They might seem too simple for some, but they're still good. The story of Bioshock 1 is gradually revealed as you play through the game. Basically, you go in and you're told by someone named Atlas that your main goal is to stop this guy named Andrew Ryan. And you do exactly that, just spread out for a while. But plot twist, it turns out you've been jebaited this whole time because Atlas reveals his real name is Frank Fontaine, and he's just been using you for his goal of getting rid of Andrew Ryan. So now your new goal is to just go and get Fontaine, and the game ends when you do just that. It was that simple, no confusion. Now I know for some story fanatics, Bioshock Infinite seems like the perfect fever dream for them, so you like what you like. But I just like Bioshock 1's story better. So yeah, there's why I think Bioshock Infinite is the worst one in the series. Now I'll say this again, I'm not saying I dislike Bioshock Infinite. I do still like the game. I'm saying that it's my least favorite of the series. But as usual, that is only my opinion, and yours could probably be different. Actually, probably a high chance that it is different because I see many people saying that is their favorite game. I unfortunately am not one of them. That's because, replay video to find out. But regardless of which game is worst or not, we can all agree that Bioshock is an amazing series. But anyways, bye.